And now,
ladies and gentlemen,
please fasten your seatbelts.
Welcome to Preneurcast.
You know, business cards being swapped, beers being drunk.
Can I say a nasty word? Can I say procrastination?
With Pete Williams and Dom Kocher.
How well did that go down?
We can talk about that entire thing in a very another rant and soapbox episode if we want to.
Visit us online at PreneurMedia.tv.
Welcome to this week's edition of PreneurCast. I'm Pete Williams, and as always, by my side is the Wren to my Stimpy, the Pebbles to my Bam Bam, Dom Goucher. How are you, buddy?
There was a brief moment there where I really thought I was going to get to be the spot to your Hong Kong Phooey.
I thought I'd leave that one to you because everyone's been tweeting that to you this morning.
I got some support for that. I'd like to thank the fans out there, the listeners, for the support for the spot to the Hong Kong Phooey thing. But, yeah, Wren to Stimpy, Pebbles to Bam Bam. It's really going downhill again.
All right, well, it's better than Jay.
On with the show.
All right, okay. It's better than Jay to my Silent Bob, which I was going to start with, but that's okay.
Hey, oh no. Oh, I'll go with that. Jay to the Silent Bob.
So, how's everything been? Another crazy week in the world of PreneurCast and all things Dom Goucher. Been to London in the UK, is that right? You've been travelling.
Yeah, I barely stood still over the weekend. I've been through various parts of the UK. Landed in London, went up to the Derbyshire area, and then back down to London and back here. All in the space of a few days. It just whistled by, with a brief bit of snow in between.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we cover all weather types in this show.
Hang on, we have a rule not to talk about the weather, mate.
You got one in the other week. Shut up.
So this week is all about branding and brands.
Yes, I'm interested in the topic of branding. It's reared its head a few times over the last couple of months as I've shifted what I'm doing away from the pure business of the media production that I'm known for and becoming a little bit more of a person in my own right. And through things like the Seven Levers Mastermind and other projects that we're working on. So you've mentioned a couple of times, just offhand, that you have a couple of thoughts on branding, and they're not particularly positive. So I'm interested.
Well, we can definitely delve deep into that, and I'll do the soapbox rant type thing that we occasionally do here on PreneurCast. So we can definitely delve into that today.
And you do it so well. Before we kick off into that one, I'd like to give a shout out and thanks to our two show sponsors. The first one of which is Read It For Me, the excellent book summary service. And we've had Steve on a couple of shows ago talking about how he does the book reviews himself, and it's a fantastic episode in its own right. But we love Read It For Me. It's a great way to preview and review and learn a bit about popular business and personal development books with some fantastic multimedia resources inside their membership area. And if you go to readitfor.me/Preneurcast, you'll get a special deal on a membership at Read It For Me. And it's well worth a check out. Anyway, if you go to that page, there's a little video that Pete and I put together showing you what's inside the membership area. But give it a go. And it's a great way to find out about books, especially if you're a bit time poor and you want to be a bit more efficient, leveraging your time. Then you can cover an awful lot of topics and publications just by going through Steve's reviews. So that's a great one.
Absolutely, and it's a free trial too. So you get a bit of a free trial with a discount coupon when you decide to subscribe. And everyone loves to subscribe to the service once they do test it out because it's amazing.
Indeed, and thanks to Steve and the gang over at Read It For Me for sponsoring this week's show.
Absolutely. All right, let me walk and step up onto the soapbox. Let's go.
Little creaking sound there.
Now, before we delve into this, I want to get your context on all of this because you're the person who instigated, as you sort of alluded to earlier, this episode. So where do you want to go? Where do you want to take this? What's your idea in terms of the show topic? Because branding's a big rabbit hole.
It is. I mean, my personal angle on this is actually personal branding, supporting and being consistent with a personal brand, and whether or not you and this is a bit of an esoteric one, but whether or not you can be the brand. One of the things that and this may not be the thing that offends you so much, but one of the things that pops up from time to time is you have people and you have brands, and some people are brands and some people are people. And a lot of people really simplify this from just having like their Twitter handles or their domain names, and they're known for those. For example, David Sparks. We talked about the Mac Power Users podcast a few weeks ago, and David Sparks, in and of himself, it's not really anything. But if you say Mac Sparky to a Mac person, everybody knows Mac Sparky. He's the guy who does the Mac Power Users podcast, and that's his Twitter handle and his domain. And that's how he gets his message out there, through that Mac Sparky brand. It kind of focuses people on who he is and what he's about. Whereas on the other end of the scale, if you take Ed Dale's most recent incarnation, eddale.co, that's Ed, and everything about Ed. There's no, it's marketing centric, but Ed is Ed. Ed is Ed Dale. Previously, and he's moved away from it now, but he used to be Tubby Nerd, and I'm not sure that was the kind of brand that he really wanted to get stabilised out there. But Ed is Ed. And Ed covers an awful lot of things within the umbrella of who Ed Dale is. But starting from nowhere, as I would put myself by comparison to such a shining light as you, I was just interested on your thoughts on whether or not you should be trying to be a brand as a person. And also as a company, for some of the listeners out there that are more than just solo entrepreneurs that run companies and bigger enterprises, whether the brand is the be all and end all, whether it's a good goal, as it were.
Oh, okay. This is a very deep rabbit hole with lots of tunnels coming off it, I think. Yes and no is probably the answers. Look, I think there's a couple of things that you touched on in that. I think as a person, you need to be known for something. You need to be known as blank guy. And a good friend of mine, well, not a good friend, but a friend of mine, Scott Ginsberg, has written a number of books around this. He's the name tag guy. He actually wears a name tag every single day and has done so for 3,000 some hundred and odd days now, or maybe even more. Every day wears a name tag. Hi, my name is Scott, to the point where he's actually got it tattooed on his chest, an actual name tag. It's quite funny. But Scott Ginsberg writes a lot about personal branding and stuff like that. So we might actually try and get him on the show one day to discuss it too, which would be pretty cool. But I think you need to be known for something. And that, if I sort of say Tony Robbins, who's Tony Robbins? Personal development
I immediately think of this really, really huge guy, but yeah, personal development.
Yeah, Lance Armstrong.
Cycling.
And cancer.
That shouldn't define you, Peter. You know that, don't you?
No, but that's what he's known for. That's what he's known for. If we go into the little internet marketing community, you've got Jeff Walker. He's a product launch guy. You've got Andy Jenkins, the video guy. You have to be sort of known for something so you can be differentiated. If you try and be all things to all people, like any business, it's not going to work. You can't be all things to all people. Look at a lot of the department stores these days. They're not working as well as they used to, particularly in this day and age, because they're trying to be all things to all people. You are better off being boutique and be known for being a market leader around that particular topic that you're getting known for. Does that sort of make sense? Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good baseline.
Yeah, so that's sort of, I guess, the starting point is I think you do have to be known for something. And this is, a conversation that Rob Somerville, Ed Dale's right-hand man, and I have had quite a bit over the last couple of years about sort of even trying to work out my own sort of positioning, and it's probably not relevant to this podcast too much. But I think that's really, really important because, a brand as such, in terms of the word brand in its own right, is basically it's who you are, it's what you stand for. As I said, it's how you're defined and differentiated. But you did touch on something else in that little introduction type segment that you just spoke about, and you talk about should I be doing branding or should someone be doing branding? And I think, and this is where you're talking about things like Twitter handles and what else you're known for online, I think that is branding as an exercise in its own right is, it's like a form of advertising where you actually are just out there to sort of get exposure for your brand. It's like buying, billboards on the side of a highway and putting up the McDonald's logo with nothing else on the billboard. To me, that's an absolute waste of money. It's a missed opportunity. Branding in terms of actively going out there to advertise your brand and build your brand should realistically be more of a byproduct of the direct response marketing that you should be doing to build your brand. You would never want to do brand advertising. You want to be doing direct response advertising around a brand that means that the branding is a byproduct.
Now that speaks directly back to the Preneur hierarchy that we talked about a few shows ago, where at the top of the pyramid, that brand awareness advertising that you just talked about is what I labelled spray and pray advertising.
Absolutely. Yeah? It's not measurable, it's not trackable, it's just a wasted opportunity where you could have a direct response result from the marketing you're doing. And, if we look at David Sparks and take that as an example, like, of course, when you actually register a domain name, you register either your personal name or as Mac Sparky, and then it's just logical from a direct response consistency perspective to use the same brand, being Mac Sparky, as your Twitter handle, as your Facebook label, as all these labels and usernames. That just makes sense from a marketing perspective, because it makes it easier for your customers to find you on different platforms. So I would say you do that for a consistency and partly a direct marketing reason, not for doing it for the whole branding side of things. That is a side benefit. That is the bonus. But you do want to have that consistency through all your marketing, because that just helps build the response. Because as soon as someone has a relationship with you, if we go back to that Preneur hierarchy, the easiest people to sell to are the people at the bottom of the hierarchy who have dealt with you before. So if they've dealt with you before and they know you as Preneur or Tony Robbins or Mac Sparky or whoever it might be, and then see you in a different platform, that consistency and that pre-trust comes with you. If you look what Google Plus is doing these days, you'll see that obviously throughout the Google search results, they're actually doing this authorship thing, so that to actually help encourage click-through rates and give people a better experience on the search results, what they're doing is actually putting the author's little icon and photo and stuff on search results. Like I was doing a bit of an egotistical search like we all do the other day for marketing podcasts, which is a term we're trying to rank Preneurcast for. And I think we're on the second page right now, we're moving up, and next to that is actually a little photo of me. Because I've been linked with the authorship of the podcast, and that helps have that consistent branding. It's the same image that I use across all my platforms online to actually build that consistency around. I'm not doing that for a branding perspective. I'm doing that to actually keep the brand consistent through my marketing. Can you see that distinction? Does that sort of make sense?
I can, and it's actually a really interesting distinction, because I don't think a lot of people think about it that way. There definitely are the two sides to what I was talking about, and I'm glad that you picked them out and separated them. There is that identity, brand identity, where, as you say, the consistency, if somebody comes and finds you down through one channel, it's easy to find you on another channel because you have a consistent brand identity. And that, I think, is obvious to a lot of people, obvious, but it's important to a lot of people, and I think it's the easiest thing to get a grasp on. But that second side of it, where, as you say, brand promotion should be a byproduct of what you do. It's almost speaking to the market leadership concept, I think. That, for example, David Sparks, let's just carry on with that for a while, and the Mac Sparky brand, as it were. He doesn't jump up and down, wear Mac Sparky T-shirts and all the rest of that. The name Mac Sparky has been associated with the great work that David Sparks does in that Mac Power Users podcast and in the blog posts that he makes and even the books that he writes. He's become a market leader, and so that label has been associated with that entity. And I think that's really, if I was to progress this and as you say, it's not really for this podcast. But if I was going that way, that's what I would want to have happen. I would want somebody to be able to attribute that label to what I do, to what I've done, to the material that I produce, to the content that I produce, that I put out there. I wouldn't want somebody to go, oh yeah, no, I remember that because I saw some guy wearing a T-shirt, or I saw a billboard, or whatever. It's a little roundabout, but it does come back to the market leadership thing. That if you do good work and you put out good content and you are a good source of information in your market, you become known. So your brand awareness grows as a byproduct of the work that you do. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Almost. I think there's a slight distinction there in terms of there's no question you have to put out good work. That's just, anybody who wants to put out crap is just kidding themselves if they're going to be successful. But it's not just about putting out good content or good products or good services. You still have to actually market it. It's not about the product. It's about the marketing. But it's not about the branding. So you have to put out good content first and foremost. But then you have to do marketing. And even if, people say that, putting out good content will then, sell itself, that's still marketing by actually, encouraging that first tweet, encouraging that first follower, or, at the bottom of your blog post, giving people a call to action to actually respond with a comment. That is part of marketing. That's marketing and selling the engagement, which then obviously creates this social media wave that everyone's talking about at the moment. But you still have to do the marketing side of things, and it's not about the branding, it's about the direct response marketing and having a call to action at the end of a blog post saying, hey, tell me about your experience with this topic I just wrote about, is a call to action. That is a direct response marketing element that you've just put in your blog post. So you've got to have the good content to get people to get to the end of the article to read that, but that's still a call to action, which is a direct response marketing tactic. Having the retweet buttons on your blog post is a direct response action. So you still have to have those actions in place to get to that tipping point that Malcolm Gladwell talks about before you get the sneezes and the people with the flu, whatever he's talking about, to actually go and spread the virus that is your high quality content or your high quality product or the great service that you offer down at the local truck stop. So you still have to actually encourage that conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate the more detailed explanation of that. It is important to, as you say, you can't just publish great content and expect A, people to find it, and B, people to talk about it, and to help you grow that brand. I guess where I'm with this definition, your little soapbox, if you're still up on it, I'm just trying to be clear in my mind. It's as you say, not about the brand. It's not about the product. So as you say, over branding things, for example, is I think I'm just trying to get a handle on a good example here that we can put out of how not to do this. And something I came across the other day actually was the exact opposite, which was under branding or a complete lack of marketing. A local client here that I'm working with, bringing all of the new world marketing techniques to a small fishing village in Spain is a very interesting opportunity.
There's only so many people who want to buy umbrellas to keep out of the sun.
Yeah, I wish it were that easy. I came across this catalogue of services, printed document. Yes, we're in the age of print over here. I came across a catalogue of services, and they paid to have it produced, and they paid to have it printed, and whatever, and they were quite proud of this. And I picked up this document, and I looked at the front cover, and it clearly states it's a catalogue of services. Pretty picture of a market relevant photograph on the front cover, and I flicked through a few pages, and I flicked to the back page, and buried in the bottom corner of the back page was the name of the company. And even smaller than the name of the company was the contact details for the company. Throughout the document, there were no actual calls to action. there was barely a mention of the website on the back page or any other means of contacting. There certainly wasn't a suggestion that people who had waded through this marketing material should do anything with it, like, heaven forfend, call the company. And at the end of the day, as I said, the actual company providing the services that their lifeblood was people calling them, booking lessons, as it were, in this particular market. The company name just wasn't really evident on the document. So you can go the other way with this.
Well, see, my issue with that little tale that you just share is more about the lack of call to actions and the lack of company name. The company name fundamentally it's irrelevant. It's not about the product or the business name, in my opinion. It's about making clear, concise, effective communication about the benefits someone's going to derive from experiencing this service, and then throughout the document having ample opportunities for that person to respond, whether it be a phone number, a physical address, a website address, whatever it might be. That's what needs to happen. Like, having the company name and logo in the bottom right-hand corner of the last page, in my opinion, is not a bad thing. If you've got strong headlines, good graphics, engaging copy with calls to action, I'm 100% fine with that, because people should be, if it's a direct response medium, they're probably not going to know necessarily who you are anyway. If you're reaching that third level of the hierarchy, you're not talking to past customers and you're not talking to people who are actually already in your funnel. You're communicating to searchers, people going out there actively searching for a solution to the problem that you solve. They're probably not going to have an experience with your brand historically anyway. So it doesn't matter about your brand, because they're not going to be making the initial decision whether they should communicate and hop into your funnel based on your name or your logo. They're going to be making that decision based on the headline, the copy, the experience, the pitch you make. So that's got to be the focus. If you are in an industry where people are buying stuff in a long purchase cycle, where they need to get referrals, they need to actually search around and look around, then your name is important, because they might go and start searching for that and talking to people about how did you experience Acme Inc. when you did this historically. But if it's simply a direct response type purchase, like, I'm going to figure out whose sunbed am I going to hire on the beach of Spain, that is not going to be a brand related purchase. It's going to be a outcome related purchase, and branding's irrelevant at that point. To give you a bit of an example, when we started the telco company, we didn't have a brand, and obviously we were very much built that national telecommunications company off the back of AdWords. That was the key driver for us. People went to Google with a problem, which was need a damn phone system, and then they found us because we were ranking number one for SEO and AdWords and all that sort of stuff, and had very compelling copy, huge range, great prices, all that good stuff. Our logo was on the site, but no one knew who we were. And that didn't stop us to grow. So it wasn't about the brand, it was about the product and service we could offer. So that's my big angle and issue with the experience you just gave, is not the logo. The logo can be in the bottom right-hand corner of the last page, because to me, if everything else is compelling enough, that's a secondary consideration.
Yeah, really, really good take on what I put forward there. And I do understand that, and I think that's really what I was looking for from you with this little soapbox piece, was a clear example. So thankfully you made one out of what I gave you. The scary thing about that document was the absolute lack of any attribute that we've talked about. It wasn't. I wasn't per se complaining that the logo was so small or anything particularly like that. It was that there's no real way of identifying the name and contact details are your last best hope for contact. If you don't do anything else with your document, if there's no real call to action, if there's nothing else, then somebody being able to at least identify your company name and contact you via a phone number.
Whoa. Why would you have a marketing piece that doesn't have call to action in it? That's the...
I just described one to you.
Yes, I understand.
But that's what I'm saying.
I hear what you're saying. And this is my issue with that, is you're saying your issue is that you still should, the call to action or the phone number is the last chance you've got. That should be the sole purpose of the damn marketing piece. If you're doing any marketing that doesn't have a clear call to action in it, stop it right now. anybody who's listening, I know you're not doing this, Dom, but I'm, ranting, lecturing the listeners right now, is that, this can be the action point for this week. Take a moment and just digest all the marketing pieces that you're doing right now, whether it be a website, a brochure, a business card, a flyer, whatever it might be, your vehicles, that you might have for your service team. If they don't have calls to action on them, you're doing branding. You're not doing marketing or direct response marketing, which is what builds businesses. Any piece of material out there with some information and your logo without a clear, decisive, definitive, identifiable call to action is not direct response marketing. You're doing branding. And hopefully people have realized by now that branding should be a byproduct of the direct response marketing, because the key is, hook, pitch, call to action, branding. In that order. That's what your marketing piece should be. If you can't fit the branding element onto your marketing piece because it's taken up with a hook, i.e. headline, pitch, the main element of the benefits and the pros and the solutions you offer, call to action, and there's no room on the rest of that DL flyer or A4 print, then leave it off. Don't worry about that. Yes, you missed the opportunity to brand as a byproduct, but that's okay, because it was a free bonus anyway you would have got. It doesn't need to be there.
See, that's better. That's the Pete that I know and love, way up there on his soapbox. That was a proper rant.
I've tried to be conservative. I don't want to offend. I don't want to offend listeners. We love them all. I don't want to offend them and make them run away crying.
Okay, fair enough. The interesting and last part of the story about this document, though, was actually that they'd given over the space on this back cover to branding, but it wasn't for them and their primary product or brand. It was actually for a new product that they were trying to build awareness for. And so the entire catalogue of services was actually overshadowed by this huge, big awareness activity. There was nothing else to it. It was quarter or half page logo of this offshoot, non-profit thing that they were doing, this activity that they were undertaking. It was another marketing activity that they'd undertaken that they were trying to get airtime for. So they printed it on the back of this catalogue. I mean, I realise that we don't want to offend people and we don't want people to run off crying, but seriously, folks, listen to what Pete said. It's not about the branding, or it is. It's hook, pitch, call to action, and I'm sorry, but if you can't get your big shiny logo on there, oh well.
Yeah. As big as my ego is, I've learned to get it out of the way, and that's what everyone needs to do.
That's another very good thing, because I think that's a big problem for people. We see this. You and I do little website reviews for clients and things, and we do these assessments, these quick triages that that we suggest as this week's action point. You look at what you're doing. Your website, and certainly landing pages on your website, should have one job. Work out what that job is. If you're sending AdWords traffic to a page, and that page has more than one call to action on it, or it's overloaded with branding information, it's not focused, it needs tidying up. Yeah, certainly. If somebody clicks on an AdWords ad, that's not going to be predominantly not going to be about your branding. It might be about someone else's brand. You might have advertised that you sell a particular product, like your telco company stocks certain equipment and your headsets company stocks certain brands of equipment. They may have identified with somebody else's brand, but they absolutely haven't identified with yours when they go there, have they?
No, not at all. Most people, don't. And, to a certain extent, I don't want to go too deep into this, but we have a number of websites obviously printing various elements and business units, and most of them are just keyword-driven URLs. It's not even a branded URL. So they're definitely not clicking through because of a brand. They're clicking through because of the ad communicates an easy solution to the problem they're searching for.
That's it. Your ad in those short number of characters, that's your hook.
Exactly.
There's no space for branding or awareness or marketing of that kind. It's all hook.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, I guess, it kind of relates to this, and it's going to probably reiterate some of the stuff we've already spoken about today. But I was sort of, thinking and digesting this whole thing that you brought up at the end of last week's episode about today's topic. And a friend of ours, Tim Reed from Small Business Big Marketing, another fantastic podcast by some Australians that I think everyone should listen to. It's a great show where they promote on a weekly basis just interviews with various business owners of how they've succeeded and what they do. And when he consults with clients, the first thing he really tries to distill and get them to understand is, I'm trying to get this right. It's work out what you're going to say before you work out where to put it. And I guess when you sort of apply that statement to what we're talking about here today is that it's important to work out what you're going to say. This is your marketing message. What do you stand for? What do you want to be known for? What solutions do you offer? And then once you get that right, then you can work out the best place to actually put it on and put it out there to get the response you need. So it's all about figuring out what your brand is and who you are and what you stand for and how you want to communicate that. Now, he's talking generally when he says that more about, okay, what sort of flavour do you want the language to be for your brand? And that's okay to have and think about building a brand that way in terms of, do you want to be known as a, clean cut accountant who's all about the numbers and very formal, or you want it to be a really fun, cool shoe store down the road that's all about just, engagement and fun and things like that. That'll dictate the marketing messages and the language you use in your marketing. And that makes sense because, again, that's, fits back to who you want to be known for and what you want to be known for. So that's part of being brand aware or brand conscious. But going out there and just sticking your logo on billboards and banners and on the side of your van is completely wasted. If you're a tradie and you've got a work van and all you've got on there is your logo or your business name, that's branding, and it's a complete waste and opportunity. You should be putting on there the benefits you do, the guarantee you give, the phone number, the website people can respond to when they see your truck parked on the sidewalk at the front of the fence that you're creating and constructing for the homeowner. People can see the workmanship and they go, oh, look, there's the van. I'll call and actually book that person for a quote as well. So that's sort of, I guess, what Tim talks about when he says, work out what you're going to say before you work out where to put it. And I think that's sort of a relevant thing to sort of add into this the conversation today.
Yeah, I do like the point, and just to bring it all back together for a second. As you say, it's okay. In fact, it's important to understand what you stand for, to have a clear idea what your message is, what your values are, and that's part of your brand values. That's part of the definition of your brand. And we're not against that, and nothing that we've said is against that. It's important. People need to know, as you said, and I think this is a really good thing to just emphasize. In this market, in this day and age, you or your company need to be known for something, and you need to be almost niche or niche to our American friends. In what it is that you're known for. I love that word. You said be boutique about it. Be specific about what you do and don't do, so that you can become known and people can focus on that. But in terms of getting the message out there, very few people, and I hate to break this to the bigger brands and the bigger businesses, but very few people focus on a brand when they're looking for something, because they may not know about the brand that they're looking for. What they're looking for, as you said in the last thing you said, was they're looking for the solution to a problem. And if you can communicate that you solve that problem, they don't care what your company's called. They don't care what color your logo is. They don't care about any of that stuff that people spend so much time and effort on. What they care about is, do you solve their problem, and can you solve their problem anytime soon? And so your job is, as you said, back to the point you made, it's about the hook. Can you create a hook, as you said, on the side of the van? Don't spend the whole side of your van with a logo and your name. Tell them what you do. Boiler servicing. You write boiler servicing in big letters on the side of your van and call me for a quote, which is your call to action, I imagine that your call rate would probably go up quite significantly, and specifically for people that want their boiler servicing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's exactly what we're trying to communicate today. So I think we've put a nice little bow on it, haven't we?
And well inside time, sir. I think now's a good opportunity, though, to just take a little second to talk about the second sponsor. He says being all corporate. I'm getting quite corporate, aren't I? I think I'm going to have to stop this. It's
definitely
almost
with the
scripted.
sponsors, yes.
Yeah, I'm really. I swear, there's no script.
I feel like I should be putting on a smoking jacket and getting a cigar out for this section.
Yeah. There isn't even a mind map on the screen in front of me. We're that freeform this week. I'm on a borrowed machine. But our second sponsor, we're very grateful to Audible, the audio book company. And we regularly either talk about books that we've read, or we recommend books that we've read, or we suggest you go and read a bit more in depth on a topic. And to find out what's out there and get an awareness of it, and maybe even an expert overview. At the beginning of the podcast, we recommend our other sponsor, Read It For Me, which is a great way to get some coverage and just really get an awareness of the books and publications. But if you actually want to consume the whole book and you want to do it in a very efficient way, then audible.com is fantastic, because you can download pretty much any book. Certainly the majority of the ones we talk about, you can download a book from audible.com onto your portable audio playing device. No favoritism on this podcast. iPhone, iPod, iPad. And you can listen to it at normal speed, or, as we recommend, as 2-speed. Get double the work done. And we have an offer from Audible audiobooks, and if you go to audibletrial.com/PreneurCast, you'll get access to a free trial of the Audible service, and also a coupon to download any book from their service to give it a try. And we do both use audible.com, both Pete and I, and we both recommend it. It's a great way to consume books while possibly you're doing something else, like driving, or, if you're Pete, exercising.
Absolutely. I've been using their service for a couple of years. I've found it absolutely fantastic. I love the audiobook stuff, and I've been doing that since I was in high school, and it's probably the cause of my enthusiastic, fast-paced speaking style, is because I listen to so many books at 2-speed. So I blame the education for my fast talking.
That's an interesting thing to blame education for. Most people blame it for other things.
That justification helps me sleep at night.
Yeah, you sell it any way you can. I would just like to point out, actually, about the sponsors, because it's a relatively new thing. I'd just like to emphasise these sponsors. There's two things that make these two sponsors stand out. The first one, and it's very, very important, both Pete and I use these services. And we don't use them because they're sponsoring the podcast. We've been users of the service for some time. Certainly in the case of audible.com, and Pete was involved with Read It For Me for some time before they became a sponsor of this show. And secondly, both these companies are providing some form of discount or coupon or other thing to PreneurCast listeners. So it's not that these companies are funding us and therefore we're talking about them, which is very often the meaning of the word sponsor, but actually you, the listeners, are getting something out of this, as well as we can wholeheartedly recommend these services. And we'd like to continue like that with our sponsors. We'd like to be able to say that we use the services and that our listeners can get something out of it as well.
Well put. So, in terms of getting something out of this for the listeners, what is the action point for this week? We spoke about people taking a moment to look at all the various marketing mediums they currently have in their business, be it a website, a brochure, a business card, a corporate van, street signage, anywhere that people interact with your marketing messages, and actually getting a bit of a feel for, should they have a direct response call to action as part of the message? And if they don't, put up an action plan in place to actually make that happen, because you'll see a very easy instant spike in inquiries and traffic and leads to your business, because you're just tweaking what you're already doing, getting that little bit of leverage extra out of what you're already doing. And that's sort of, I guess, the key action point for today.
Absolutely. And remember that the significant order of things that Pete put forward is there should be a hook, there should be a pitch, there should be a call to action, and if you can fit it on, there should be some branding. But definitely check that out. And in next week's show, Pete, what do you think?
Well, something what you and I were discussing that would make a fantastic episode is talking about marketing assets. Now, this is an extension of a presentation that a friend of ours gave, Eugene Ware, who's the genius behind Noble Samurai, the software company that makes some fantastic marketing applications for online businesses. And he did a presentation in London, maybe almost 2 years ago now, maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I think it would have been. At a conference that I spoke at and that you were at. And he spoke about marketing assets. And it was such a fantastic presentation. And I think that the message and the distinctions that he made is definitely worth reiterating and sharing and discussing on the show, because it's interesting when you actually sit down and think about what are all the assets you have in your business that relate to marketing. Because most people, when they think about assets for their business, they think about the trucks, the tools, the computers, the building, physical accounting-based assets. But if we look at this from a marketing perspective, we're going to discuss what are all the assets you have in your marketing that you can grow, that you can have a consistent ROI on. So make sure you check out next week's show, because I'm super excited. I'm going to revisit Eugene's presentation. I'm going to actually try and have a chat to Eugene about it to sort of see what other distinctions he's developed internally off the back of that presentation in the 18 months. And we'll repurpose it and share it all to everyone on next week's PreneurCast episode.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it myself as well, because it was one of the standout presentations because it was at that particular conference, because it was about business and marketing, and it gave a new perspective. And I've had, as you say, 18 months to apply some of the things that Eugene talked about and have a little bit of a think about it. So I think we can both put our own spin on that material. So I think it's going to be an interesting show.
Look forward to it. See you next week, Dom. And for all you listeners, hope to see you on Twitter, @Preneur. For me, @Dom Goucher or D Goucher. What is it, Dom? I keep forgetting.
No, we need to start branding out, don't we? It's @D Goucher.
@D Goucher for you. PreneurMedia.tv is the home of the podcast, so you can get all the show notes, the transcripts, the links. There's also, the Facebook comments on there, so you can leave questions and feedback on the show. But when it comes to feedback, as we always ask, if you do enjoy the show, please help us out and say thank you by leaving a comment on your local iTunes store. A bit of a rating and a comment always helps us continue our rankings, which gets more listeners, which in turn makes this a lot more fun to do as well. So big thanks to everyone so far, and continue to chat with us online through social media, as they say. Until next week, see you guys.
You've been enjoying another fine episode of PreneurCast with Pete Williams and Dom Goucher. Make sure to hang out with the boys online at PreneurMedia.tv or drop them a line via PreneurCast@PreneurGroup.com.